Dive in tonight into today's webinar on using specialty crop root vegetables for soups and preserving. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the Food Shed Alliance. We are a nonprofit dedicated to building a resilient, sustainable food system in New Jersey, one that supports farmers, protects our environment, and ensures equitable access to fresh local food for all. We know that farming, food, and the environment are deeply connected, but today, small and mid-sized farmers face major challenges: limited land access, changing climate conditions, and a food system that often prioritizes profits over people. That's why we work to strengthen farmer viability, connect local food to local communities, and advocate for policies that support regenerative farming. Workshops like this one are part of that mission, bringing farmers, food producers, and communities together to celebrate and sustain local food traditions. With that, I'm excited to turn this over to Brianna, our marketing coordinator at the Food Shed Alliance. Bree manages all of the marketing aspects for our organization and is leading tonight's webinar. She'll introduce our featured speaker, Renee, and get us started. Bree, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on extending the season with root cellar soups. I'll just read off some grant language and then we'll kind of get started. So this program is supported by the 2022 Specialty Crop Block Grant Program and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. This content is solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of the USDA, just disclaimer. So today we'll be diving into some time-tested traditions of root cellar storage and how these methods can help extend the life of your root vegetables. If you've ever wondered how to get the most out of your seasonal harvest or your produce from the grocery store, you're definitely in the right place. By these techniques, or by the end of the session, you'll have a better understanding of how to integrate some storing techniques in your kitchen and some cooking techniques and how to make the most of your seasonal bounty. So today we are joined by Renee Marinelli. She is the Farm Outreach Coordinator with NORWSCAP in partnership with Local Share program of the Food Shed Alliance. She provides essential support and outreach to farmers participating in the Local Share program and is very passionate about sustainable agriculture. She works closely with local farms to enhance their engagement with the Food Shed Alliance, all in which helps to strengthen our impact and our success. I will let her talk a little bit more about herself and her culinary expertise, and then we'll get started on the webinar. Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, Bree. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight to learn about cooking and preserving root vegetables. This evening, we'll be exploring cooking and storing of root vegetables for maximum flavor and nutrition, preservation techniques to reduce waste and extend shelf life, as well as I will be presenting out two different recipes, one on, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. One on pickling, so we'll learn how to do a quick pickle, and one on how to take those ugly root vegetables that everybody doesn't know what to do with and make a nice pureed soup. So I figured in order to start, I'll just introduce myself a little bit more. So as Bree said, I'm Renee. I'm the Farm Outreach Coordinator with NORWSCAP and Local Share. I am a graduate from the Culinary Institute of America, so I have a bachelor's degree in food studies and an associate's degree in culinary arts. I have a love for Latin American and Italian cuisine and culture, so much of my cooking style is reflective of those traditional ways. While my current role is not necessarily culinary focused, my background allows me to blend a very good understanding of local foodways paired with sustainable practices. So I have a general overview and it gives me a different lens to work with the community with. So, nice. Okay, so we'll just jump right into it. So I figured to understand how to cook with a root vegetable, you first have to know what a root vegetable is. So it is the edible plant part that grows underground. It also acts as a storage unit for all those nutrients, allowing the plant to survive through harsh conditions. Because they absorb water and nutrients directly from the soil, they are often rich in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. There are two different categories, like botanical categories of these vegetables. One is true roots. So that's your carrots and your beets, and your tubers like your potatoes, your yucca or cassava. So today I'm going to be mainly focusing on a small list: potatoes, sweet potatoes, cassava or yucca, beets, turnips, parsnips, carrots, rutabaga, and then onions, garlic, and ginger, just for fun. So I want to focus and say that root vegetables are more than just culinary staples, more than just ingredients. They are the foundation of global food traditions, key sources of sustenance, and markers of seasonality. If we look back at history, they have nourished civilizations for centuries, influenced agricultural advancements, trade networks, and cultural identities. So again, despite their ugly appearance, they offer a diverse range of textures, flavors, and very well adapt to various climates around the world. So yeah, let's begin. So I'm going to start with kind of going over, from that list, going over the different flavor profiles of those vegetables, along with maybe the nutrients that you would find with that, and just a little overview of that. And then I'll move into some of the historical aspects of it. So I'm going to begin with what I call the comfort foods, or the comfort food of root vegetables, starchy vegetables. So your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, your yucca or cassava. These tend to be higher in carbohydrates, which give them a dense, filling texture with a mild, slightly sweet flavor. Specifically potatoes, so your russet, your like tiny creamer, your Yukon Gold, they are grown year round, but they are at their best, their peak quality in the fall. They are originally from the Andes Mountains, but they quickly became a global staple, and they are adaptable to countless dishes and cooking methods. Nutritionally, they provide a great source of vitamin C, potassium, and fiber, particularly when the skin is left on. So if you're making mashed potatoes, you can leave the skin on, baked potatoes, like the stuffed baked potatoes everybody likes to make, things like that. So the sweet potato, on the other hand, it thrives in the fall and winter and is rich in beta carotene, which supports eye health and the immune system. Yucca and cassava, which if you're not really familiar, it's like, think tropical potato. It grows year round in warm climates, and it's a vital food source in many cultures, providing an energy-dense carbohydrate base and rich supply of vitamin C. So that is what I classify as the starchy vegetables. Now I'm going to move on to the earthy vegetables, which include the beets, the turnips, the carrots, celeriac, and rutabagas. And parsnips and turnips are also included in here. So these vegetables tend to have a deeper, richer, and often mineral-like flavor. Their unique characteristics come from the soil they grow in, and many of them develop even more complexity once they are either roasted or cooked. The concept of terroir, commonly associated with wine, I feel also applies to vegetables. And terroir refers to the way a plant absorbs the characteristics of the environment it grows in. So the soil, the climate, and even local microbes influence its flavor. Beets, for example, can taste sweeter or more mineral heavy depending on where they are grown. These vegetables thrive in the fall, the winter months, making them essential for colder months when fresh produce is limited. They are nutrient powerhouses. They are rich in nitrates, which help improve blood flow and endurance. I'm going to move on to carrots, which have high levels of beta carotene, which are really good for eye health. Turnips and rutabagas provide vitamin C, fiber, antioxidants that support digestion and immunity. And when they are roasted, which not everybody knows, when they are roasted, their natural sugars caramelize, making them even more flavorful and enjoyable. I feel like everybody gets the turnip wrong. They write it off right off the bat. It's very good and very delicious. So now I'm going to talk about the aromatic vegetables, which include your onions, your garlic, your ginger, your leeks, anything kind of in the allium family. They are bold, fragrant, and known for their ability to add depth and complexity to dishes. So some people classify mirepoix as aromatics, which is your carrots, your onions, and your celery. So that's a classic French soup base, and really any base to make a stock, a sauce, anything of the nature like that. Other people refer to aromatics as the Holy Trinity, which is a Creole Cajun cooking base, same concept as mirepoix, but this one kind of includes onions, celery, and green bell pepper. So this is more, you'll find this more down in like Louisiana, that style of that region. So today for today's purposes, I'm gonna classify aromatics as onions, alliums, and some ginger. So these vegetables are available year-round, but their peak season is usually late summer to fall. And aside from their culinary uses, they have an impressive list of like the health benefits. For instance, onions and garlic contain sulfur compounds that boost the immune system and have anti-inflammatory properties. My dad always tells me, if you're traveling, eat garlic. It'll help your immune system, which he's actually totally right on that one. And so ginger is known for its digestive benefits and anti-nausea effects. So you'll find that in like teas and stuff to help combat, those ailments. I believe aromatics are quite literally the backbone of countless cuisines and bases for these cuisines. Even though they are just the smallest, they have such an impact on flavor and dishes that they create. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the origin and history of these vegetables, just a few of them. I find that you can't really appreciate a vegetable unless you know where it comes from, the history, the story, its journey, its historical significance. I do believe that what we eat today is deeply connected to that piece. So I'll begin with the potato because I love the story of the potato. It is beloved throughout the world, and I feel many people kind of write it off as an Irish or an English staple, or even an all-American classic, But the potato is not actually native to North America. It actually originated in the Andes Mountains, which is now modern-day Peru, Bolivia. It was actually first domesticated there 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. The Incan civilization cultivated potatoes as a major food source, recognizing their resilience and ability to grow in harsh mountainous conditions. Potatoes were so important to the Incans that they developed techniques to freeze dry them into a lightweight, long-lasting product called chuño, which is still eaten in Andean cultures today. Another side note that these Incan cultures were the first people to also kind of, I'll say, use the culinary technique of freeze drying. So they would go up high up in elevations. They would not live on top of these mountains, but like, elevations down or so many feet down. And when they were ready to do their freeze drying, they would bring their stuff up top the mountain, leave it out, probably covered too, I'm not sure, but they would leave it out and overnight it would freeze dry and they would come back and grab their items. So it's very interesting that the culinary knowledge existed back then for just something like that. So chuño ensured that the Incans had food reserves during times of famine or war. And again, it's just a testament to show like these ancient civilizations, the potato was vital and it was just vital to their survival. So now to talk about how the potato made its way to Europe, the Spanish conquest of the Americas in the 16th century introduced the potato to Europe, where it was initially met with suspicion. Many Europeans believed it was poisonous because it belonged to the nightshade family, but once its potential was realized, it quickly became a staple, particularly in Ireland, Germany, and France, where it helped feed growing populations. I want to say the most significant event tied to the potatoes is the Irish potato famine, which was between the mid-1800s, 1850s. And during the 1800s, the Irish population had adopted the potato, and it quickly became a staple, which they heavily depended on due to its high yield and nutritional value. But unfortunately, during this time, their crops were quickly infested with a fungal disease known as potato blight, which wiped out crops completely. This was due to its ability to quickly spread spores throughout the air, which ended up infecting entire fields, ultimately leading to widespread famine, mass immigration to the United States. So one thing I want to also note is that they used a specific variety of potato, which I'm not sure if I remember the name of. Anyway, I can't remember the name, but it is a very similar variety to your modern day like russet or Yukon Gold. And because they only had one variety, it wasn't genetically like strong to fight off this disease. So all of the crops were wiped out. It was very sad. But Peru still honors their most valued crop today through their national holiday, National Potato Day, which is celebrated on May 30th. With over 4,000 grown, or Peru has the largest variety of potatoes, 4,000 varieties, with countless traditional dishes. One being papa alla, I'm not gonna pronounce this right, so, but papa alla huancaina. It's a dish of boiled potatoes in a spicy cheese sauce, and causa rellena, which is a layered cold potato dish filled with avocado, chicken, and/or seafood. So I always say that Peru is like the potato haven, or literally the potato destination of the world. Like they love their potatoes. So I love that story. It's so interesting. So I'm gonna just move on to a couple different other items, just a couple other crops, and then we can move on to some of the cooking stuff. So the beets originated in the Mediterranean region, particularly North Africa and the European coasts. Unlike the potato, which were cultivated for their edible tubers, initially the ancient tribes and civilizations that once found these, they were valued for their leaves rather than their roots. So initially, like it was only the beets, roots, leaves that were eaten, not the beet itself. But the ancient Greeks and Romans used the beets both as food and medicine, and the Greeks actually believed that beets were an aphrodisiac, while the Romans used them to treat fevers and blood disorders. There's actually a really, really old cookbook that dates back to Roman times, Apicius, I think I'm saying it right, Apicius, but it's a Roman cookbook. It's the first known culinary text. And if you haven't read it, go try and read it. Your measurements are very different. When I was in culinary school, we took a class, and it was very interesting because my professor gave us recipes dating back to Roman times. So we cooked from this cookbook, and it's very challenging to take a recipe from an ancient times and try and read it as you would today. The measurements are off, totally different, as well as the ingredients are named something different as well. Cooking techniques have changed, so it's very interesting. So where I'm going with this is that ancient civilizations use the same product we use today, probably look different, but also their cooking techniques were completely different than what we do today. So anyway, jump back into beets. They have a beet recipe that is actually prepared with honey and vinegar, which is honestly very similar to like modern day pickled beets, just a little bit different. So by the Middle Ages, beets had then spread to Europe, like throughout Europe, and became an important crop especially in Eastern Europe. So that's where you see the most famous beet dishes, borscht. And that's basically just like a deep red soup of beets, basically, and some other spices. But it's now a complete staple in Russia, Ukraine, and Polish cuisine. I know a lot of people that eat this and are from that culture, and they say it's like a comfort home food for them. So it's often made with beef broth, fermented beets, and sour cream. And in some regions, it's even considered a dish of hospitality. So another side note about beets, and I'm taking a lot of, but a lot of side roads, but this vegetable played a very important role in the sugar industry. In the 18th century, scientists discovered that beets contained high amounts of sucrose, leading to the development of beet sugar. And by the 19th century, when the British imposed sugar blockades during the Napoleonic Wars, France turned to beets to produce sugar, significantly altering global sugar production. Today, beets are still culturally significant in many places, not only for their culinary uses, but for their connection to fertility, vitality, and good fortune in various traditions. So beets are very vital to certain cultures. Now I want to touch on two more. I love history, so I'm just gonna dive right in. So the onion. It's a common ingredient, but I feel so many people aren't too familiar that it has such an extensive history. And so it is believed to have originated in Central Asia, specifically Iran and West Pakistan. But it's quickly spread due to their ease of storage and long shelf life, making it ideal for travelers and traders. The ancient Egyptians held onions in high regard, considering them a sacred vegetable and a symbol of eternal life. Their layered structure was thought to represent the many layers of existence, and onions were even placed in the tombs of pharaohs as an offering for the afterlife. It was also said that onions were buried with King Tutankhamun, a testament to their cultural and spiritual significance. But beyond Egypt, onions were a staple item for many nomadic indigenous groups, including early Turkic and Mongolic tribes, who cultivated them as they moved across Asia and Europe. Onions also made their way to the Americas, where Native American tribes like the Apache and the Cherokee used wild onions for both food and medicine. They believed that onions could help treat colds, infections, and even repel spirits. Throughout history, onions have been a fundamental part of global cuisine. I don't know if anyone knows the French famous soup, French à l'oignon, or the more American version, the French onion soup. It's just a fancy word for it, but very famous in France and in India, onions are a key ingredient in many of their curries, which form the base of countless dishes. And then in Mexico, they pickle a lot of onions to add brightness to tacos and other traditional dishes. And then last one I have here is garlic. It is a relative of the onion, so it's part of the allium family. Quick, interesting history, it originated in Central Asia. And it was cultivated as early as 5,000 years ago, quickly spreading to Egypt, India, and China. Ancient Egyptians believed garlic had magical and medicinal powers, using it to strengthen laborers who built the pyramids. It was also a staple in the diets of Greek and Roman soldiers, who believed it gave them strength and endurance before battles. But beyond Europe, garlic became essential in traditional Chinese medicine, where it was used to boost immunity and digestion. In medieval Europe, garlic was thought to ward off diseases, so they would actually wear like garlic necklaces for protection during the Black Plague, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, that's a little bit about garlic. And the history, short little history of root vegetables. So I just have a few other things I want to kind of go over before we jump right into the cooking aspect of everything. So when you're at the grocery store, farmer's market, wherever you get your produce. I kind of have selection tips, I guess you could call them selection tips, best practices to pick out the best item or the best product for your cooking needs. So for potatoes, and this can go for potatoes and sweet potatoes, you kind of want firm, smooth skin. For regular potatoes, no green spots or sprouts. For myself, I cook a lot, so it's not good practice probably, but if you have a little green spout, you can always dig it out and use the rest of the potato. But usually no green sprouts, definitely no sprouts. That means it's way past. For sweet potatoes, you want to avoid bruising or soft spots. With yuca or cassava, if you're familiar with that item, you want, again, firm, smooth skin, no cracks or molds, and the inside should be white, completely white, not gray. For beets, again, you want firm, smooth skin, but with vibrant color. And if the greens are attached, obviously the greens should be green, not slimy or anything of the sort like that. Turnips, again, same thing, small to medium, large. The large ones can become fibrous or have a woody texture. Doesn't mean you can't eat them. If they are on the bigger side, I say just blend them with, like, some people use them and put them in mashed potatoes. So you can always do that and cut the woodiness down if that's not to your liking. But the bigger ones you can still use. So for parsnips, same thing. You want something firm, pale, small to medium size. The rutabagas, usually they're a heavier item. They're gonna be firm, and if you go to the store, like wherever you go, ShopRite, Wegmans, Giant, all these, usually they will have a wax coating for storage purposes intact, and you can look for that. For celeriac or celery root, you're gonna want heavy, rough surface, no rough spots. If anyone's not familiar with celeriac, it's basically, think of like a parsnip, right? But with a slight celery taste. It is a celery root. So onions, again, firm, dry skin, no soft spots or sprouting. For garlic, you want a tight, firm bulb, no green sprouts. And for ginger, you want same thing, firm, smooth skin, and no wrinkles or mold. So usually for myself, if I have a knob of ginger and a piece of it is moldy, you can usually cut that piece off and the rest of it should be fine. But for good practice, if the majority of it is moldy, it's and not hard or firm, you just throw it out for good practice. So that's a little bit about just the root vegetables, their seasonality, kind of a nutritional value, best practices to cook and eat a vegetable. So I'm just gonna now take you through. I did go out and prep a quick root veg soup. So I basically took onions with a bunch of butter, because you can't go wrong with butter, and we made caramelized onion. And once that's about 3/4 of the way cooked, I went ahead and added in a sprig of rosemary, just for more flavor, more depth. And then I took a rutabaga, parsnips, carrots, a turnip, and a rutabaga. And I cut that up. And again, this is all going to be blended into a pureed soup, so it doesn't have to be a beautiful cut. Put that on a sheet tray, roasted that in the oven at 400 degrees. Again, I did that same thing with a bulb of garlic. You cut the top off, you put a little bit of olive oil, you can wrap it in foil if that's what you prefer, and you roast it in the oven. Salt, pepper, any kind of seasonings you like. You can do garlic powder if you want more of like a smoky, spicy kind of a flavor. You can do a little bit of cayenne and smoked paprika. Regular paprika adds all that nice flavor to it. So I did save some of the root vegetables that were roasted. I didn't hard roast them as far as you could take them. So I do have them right here. I could show you guys. So this is what they look like once they come out of the oven. And I left them in the oven 400 degrees for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. You can always go longer, but it is good practice. You don't want to move them around because once you start moving your vegetables around, they won't get that nice brown flavor you want. That's the sugar's caramelizing. That's that good flavor you want in the soup. You can also boil these if you'd prefer that. The difference between roasting and boiling is you'll lose some nutrients with boiling. But roasting, it just packs in a whole bunch of flavor. So I know it's also coming into the summer months, and so I feel people might not really 100% be really gung-ho on making a soup. So you can still eat root vegetables in the summer, well into the summer months. And so usually what you can do is you can take chicken or a steak and you can do the same thing. You can roast your vegetables and you can eat your vegetables in a roasted manner like that. You don't have to blend them up or anything. So once you do that, you could take them, you put them in a blender, a mixer, whatever you have. You can add some chicken stock and your heavy cream. And again, any other seasonings you'd like to add. And you blend that up until you get a nice puree soup like this. And so if you want it to be a little more chunkier, you can leave it chunky. It's the beautiful thing about something like this is you can make it to your liking. So that's a little bit about that soup. Again, the nice part is you can mix and match. So if you want more of like a carrot-based soup, take away the other stuff, roast your carrots, roast some onions. If you don't have time or you're busy at home, you want something quick, you don't even have to caramelize the onions. It just adds more depth of flavor to the soup itself. You can always cut the onions, quarter them, throw them on the same sheet tray, and you have a 1-sheet tray soup. Throw them in the blender, blend it up, you're done. But it's so versatile making root vegetable soups because you can do a carrot ginger soup. And it's all the same base. You pick your root veg, your seasonings, so you can do carrot and ginger. You can do a potato leek, but add turnips. So you can do turnips, potatoes, and leeks. Roast that off, blend it up into a nice pureed soup, and you kind of have like a nice potato-y soup with some turnips. So it's very versatile that you can do. So that's that the root vegetable soup. So now I'm gonna kind of show you like a quick pickle. And a quick pickle is very different, not to be confused with regular pickling practices. This is a very transformative technique. It's again not like a regular pickle because a regular pickle will take weeks to develop. This is something that you can definitely eat within the next 4 or 5 hours. So you can prep it in the morning for dinner. So it's very easy to do something like this. You can take any kind of a hard root vegetable. Today I'm just going to use carrots and some radishes I already have pre-cut up. I don't know if you can tell, I'll grab 2 here, but I did slice them thin like this. So they're cut very thin. I just like that it depending on how much time you have, I guess you could say, the size will also help, so the thinner you slice it, the quicker it'll pickle. So you don't have to cut them this way. If you want to cut them in slices, you want to dice it, you want to do a fancy cut you want to do on a mandolin or something, it's totally up to you. But usually I would say any kind of a firm root vegetable pickles best. So you see pickled onions a lot and stuff like that. So this will actually add more of a flavor profile to these vegetables. It'll be sweeter, spicier, and a little bit more of an acidic tang to it from the vinegar. So a basic simple brine you're going to want to use is I usually do equal parts water and vinegar. And again, the nice part about this is you can customize this to, excuse me, your liking. So if you're more of like a garlic person, You can crush up some garlic cloves. You don't even have to cut them. You just crush them up with your knife, throw them into your brine, and you're done. But you can do garlic, you can do peppercorns, you can add pepper flakes, ginger, anything. That's again the beautiful thing about this. And so what you're gonna want to do to assemble something like this, I just have like a quick little mason jar. Again, it's not real pickling, so you don't have to boil this, you don't have to do anything special. I'm just using a mason jar because it looks cute and it's the next best thing I had besides like an ugly Tupperware container. So what I do, because it's easiest, you're gonna want to take your carrots and you're just gonna plop them in here. I fill them about like halfway to 3/4 of the way because you're gonna want your liquid to obviously completely cover it. So you just plop everything in. Something like this. And I have a quick pickle brine right here, which is again equal parts water and white vinegar, but you can do rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar, any kinds of vinegars of the sort like that. I usually don't get too fancy and do like lemon vinegar or any of the fancier ones. You can totally do that if that's your style, but I'm more of a simple person, so you're gonna take this, and this is also the part where once you have this packed, if you want your peppercorns in here, your ginger, your garlic, anything extra accessory part, you can add that in here now. And so now you're just gonna take it and you're gonna pour. I know you can't see me, but I'm pouring. You could pour your liquid over top, just so it reaches the top and everything is covered. I've seen some people, if you really have stuff jam packed in there, or your stuff, your product's not really staying down. I know I've seen other chefs, they take weights and they'll push the stuff down, paper towel, different things of the sort like that just helps the product stay submerged. And that's the easiest part about this is now it's all done. So you just take the lid, you cover it, and you're done. But I must say, one thing I forgot to mention is that your brine, it needs to be hot. So you need to have this hot, boiled, and then pour over. Let it sit for a minute or two. And then you can package it up, put it in the fridge, you're done. So that's the easiest part with the brine. So it's really customizable to whatever you have in the fridge. Really easy to add different kind of flavor components to your dish and so forth. So yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else I want to cover. I pretty much ran through everything.
I had a
I'm gonna
real quick
I guess
question.
what I can just talk about lastly is this. I do have a little chart I made myself, which kind of goes over the different cooking applications and best cooking applications for good flavor and high nutrition, like keeping that nutrition for each vegetable that I talked about. If I can go down the list and talk about that. So for your potatoes, you can roast them. If you keep the skin on, like I said previously, you retain your nutrients. But if you boil or mash them, it doesn't really retain your nutrients, but it'll preserve like some of the potassium in there. Baked or whole, for your sweet potatoes will be, they'll be sweet and super moist, but when they're steamed, they're best for beta carotene. For your yuccas or your cassava, you actually it's good practice to actually boil them first and then either fry or mash them. It removes some of it's cyanogenic compounds in there. I don't think one's gonna kill you, but over time, can do some damage on your body. So Yes, I can share my chart. So for the beets, if you roast them, they are really good for sweetness and retains your nutrients. And if you steam them, it actually preserves the folate product, the folate compounds in the product. Your turnips and your parsnips, they kind of, I always say they go hand in hand, but if you caramelize them, that brings out this like beautiful sweetness, natural sweetness. And then for turnips, you can use them as an alternative for mashed potatoes. And actually they are lower in carbohydrates. So if you're watching your carb intake and but you still want mashed potatoes, you can substitute it for a turnip mashed potato, and it's a little bit healthier for you. For your rutabagas, I just say roast them. They're naturally have like this sweet and nutty flavor, which is really kind of comes out once you roast it. And then your celeriac or your celery, again, I love it best in soups, but you can roast it and it again has this earthy, nutty flavor. And then for your onions, like we did here, to caramelize them, this actually brings out their natural sweetness. So if you were to eat this right now, it would be sweet. I mean, not like chocolate or ice cream, but has a naturally sweet flavor to them, without adding any extra sugar or anything of the sort like that. But when they are raw, I know they're spicy, but they actually have a high sulfur content. For garlic, it's best if you leave them crushed and rested for 10 minutes. It actually has a high allicin content, which is really good for, you know, you're fighting antifungal, antibacterial kind of properties of the sort like that. But again, like we did for the soup, you roast them. I wish I had more roasted garlic, but if you roast them, it actually has a very sweet, mellow flavor. So, and for carrots, again, roasting your carrots, it brings out like a nice, beautiful flavor, like a nice sweet flavor, roasting. So I'm a very big person for roasting vegetables. So, but that's kind of the, on that. And, if I can just say one more thing, on like storage. I did want to kind of go over storage for this. For long-term storing, root cellars are ideal for your potatoes, your carrots, your parsnips, your beets, which should be stored between like 32 and 40 degrees. I mean, I don't know if anybody has thermometers down in their basement, but if it's cool down there, they should be fine. But it's good practice to have it, between 32 to 40 degrees. And they say high humidity. So anywhere between 90 to 95, 100% humidity keeps them like well. If you want to preserve like anything like parsnips, carrots, beets, turnips, you can blanch and freeze them. So you just boil them briefly, cool them, and then freeze them. And then once you thaw them out, you can use them for your soups. You can juice them, anything in the sort like that. For your pickling purposes, you can pickle your radishes, beets, carrots, and if you pickle, I'll say properly, not if you don't do a quick pickle, but you do the actual pickling process, you boil everything, you secure it in, it can sit on your shelf for months. So that's the nice part, is you can preserve things pickling for a while, and it'll extend past like freezer life, in my opinion. And then the last kind of long-term storage tip that I have is dehydrating. So I don't know if if you have a dehydrator, that's wonderful. If you don't, another great tip is to turn your oven to its lowest setting. And not all ovens can go below 200. So if yours goes below 200, that's perfect. I don't recommend doing it at 200 because it will slowly bake it. But it's that, something like that is great for carrots, sweet potatoes, beets, And then they can be either rehydrated in soups, turned into powders. You could put them into juices or smoothies. Or you can, if you have a dehydrator with your racks and layers, you can make chips. So you can, like something like how people make kale chips, you can make sweet potato chips, beet chips, yuca chips. Really, you can make a chip out of anything. But those are really like the biggest long-term storage tips I have. But I always say if you prep something out, like you make a soup like what we did today, you can always put those in Ziploc bags, airtight, and you can put it in the freezer, and that should be good for at least a month or two. So it's another way, quick, easy, drop it into hot water, and you have like a meal for the day. So, but that's I think that's pretty much it on kind of root vegetables and cooking and some different cooking techniques. Blanching is I would say blanching is I recommend it because product can get waterlogged. And so blanching and freezing, it works best with it really you can do it with anything. You could do it with a carrot, you can do it with a beet, you can do it with a rutabaga, any of your root veg you can really do it with. I wouldn't do it with your potatoes because then you're gonna have mashed potatoes in your fridge. Unless you do it with like a non-starchy potato. So like your creamer or your Yukon Gold, but even then it could just mash. So I really say like carrots, parsnips, beets, turnips, rutabagas, and blanching quick. And just so for anybody that doesn't know, blanching is excuse me, if you're gonna like take it's like almost like a boil, right? But you're not boiling. So you're gonna take your water and you'll put it up to boil and you're gonna dip it in for maybe like 2 seconds. So it's like a flash boil. And you really are just like kissing it with the water. You don't want to cook it all the way through. It's just like a quarter of the way cook. Just to kind of hold it together, so to speak. And then you cool it and it goes right into the freezer. I don't really know, I should know the science behind it, but I don't know the science behind why blanching works well. So, but it does work well with like heartier vegetables. So,
So I guess maybe you answered it, but Eric's asking what is a blanching 101?
oh yes. Yeah, so basically blanching 101, you're gonna peel all your vegetables. You don't, I mean, unless you like to eat the skin, you prefer to blanch everything. And so, whether you're blanching broccoli or your root veg or anything, I always say it's best to, and this is also, I've worked in restaurants, so it's not always easy for the home chef. But you're gonna want to dip your product in for until it brightens in color. And once it brightens in color, then you know to pull it out. So you're gonna want to go as long as maybe a minute. It's tricky because the hardier the product. So for instance, a carrot or green beans. Green beans, I'm putting them in and taking them right out because they will blanch like that. Because you still want that almost raw aspect to it. But you want it to be somewhat cooked. And so things more so like a beet, you'll let it sit for a minute or two. And then you can get fancy with it. So like if you're blanching beets, you can add vinegar. You can add a little bit of like peppercorns to it to give it some more flavor. But once that comes out, I don't know if people understand the science behind carryover cooking, but once you heat a product up and you pull it from that water, it will continue to cook. So it'll continue to cook until it completely cools down, which means you may have blanched it and pulled it out at the perfect, maybe at the perfect time.
Moment.
Exactly. You'll pull it out at the perfect moment and then it'll continue to cook. So what I do, and it is kind of difficult at home, is you get an ice bath. So you'll have ice, water, and once you pull that stuff right out of the boiling water, you just drop it right in there and it instantly cools. So it's if you don't have that kind of capabilities, you can always, and it's again, I always say it's eyeballing, but which isn't, probably the best word of advice, but you always want to pull it out if you don't have that capability to uh, use an ice bath. You're just gonna want to pull it out a little bit before, and then it'll carry over cooking. So it's something similar to if you've ever cooked a steak, right? And you're like, you touch it on the grill or you look at it on the grill and you're like, wow, this is perfect. And then you pull it off and then you go to eat and you're like, what's wrong with it? It's overcooked. It's that carryover process. So whenever you want something to be perfect, you pull it a little bit before and it carries to the like maybe 4 or 5 degrees higher, and then it'll drop. So that's a little bit of blanching 101. I always recommend if you're putting things in the freezer using freezer bags. It's the best thing. I don't think freezing things in a mason jar as such is a good idea. It's airtight, but I think a Ziploc bag is a little more secure in my opinion. And you can double bag. It's always good practice. So yeah, and one other key thing is you don't want to put a bunch of water in your bag because then you're gonna you have a higher chance of creating like crystals, which then can lead to like freezer burn. So a little bit of a
Cool. Well, thanks,
blanching.
Renee.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I had one question, and maybe it's a little bit off topic, but I was really interested in your history lesson at the beginning.
Oh, sure.
And so I was thinking, like, what is the oldest cooking technique maybe you've ever done or that you know of?
Wow, now I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole, but I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. But I do know that like when you go back years, like, and I'm talking right before fire was right,
Mhm.
people or whatever you want to call, we weren't cooking our food, right? So we were still on all fours. Because we weren't cooking our food, we didn't have the abilities to run fast or do all this stuff because we weren't eating proteins. It was just, you know, uh, the other stuff, plants. And then once we got the abilities to uh, cook and it might have started as something as like a campfire, and the person is cooking the next thing they could find, an animal, and they're roasting it and they're turning it, right? Something as simple as a cooking over a fire. And so from that's kind of when we started to migrate. And so then you see kind of people starting to migrate out and form these small little towns and villages. And I don't know the true answer to the question of what's the oldest cooking technique. I want to say something that has to do with maybe cooking underground. Because in my thinking, it's once you have fire, you start moving, you start building towns, and nomadic groups start moving. You start settling down. You have the hunter gatherers start to emerge. That sort of landscape and thought. And then how are you going to cook? And so I feel cooking underground and so shoving your meats or whatever into a clay on the bottom of the hole you dug underground, and then putting the branches, the leaves, and in some in Hawaii they did that with pork, and they would put banana leaves on top, and in Central and South America they used banana leaves with corn, so they make tamales and stuff. And so it's kind of different around the world and stuff like that. So I don't have a true answer, but I do feel it's something with like cooking with over an open fire would be like, or underground would be something of the first real cooking technique.
Well, that's even
So
interesting that you say that, they're cooking underground because we're still, even in this case, storing things underground. And that's kind of
yeah,
still today the best practice of even just storing vegetables and meats and just things that we eat every day.
absolutely, yeah. It's very interesting.
It is very interesting. Thank you. Well, does anybody have any questions that they want to send over in the chat? And Renee's more than happy to answer anything. If you have any cooking tip questions or anything that you feel like you might have been missed out, just feel free to write that in the chat. We'll give everyone a second. Renee, how long have you been doing culinary or, as a chef?
Uh, well, really, I've been cooking since, I know this is the cliche answer, but since I can remember, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, with my mom, my grandmother, uh, I've now acquired their recipes. And so from that, it's always funny because I was sitting there, I remember like it was yesterday in high school, wondering what should I do with my life? Like
Mhm.
I don't know. My dad's like, well, you like to cook. Why don't you go to culinary school? I was like, oh, that's the best idea. And so since then, like in high school, I worked at a pizza shop, a pizzeria, kind of local restaurant, and I was a busser, and I was not a fan of waitressing or cleaning, and I always wanted to be in the back with the hustle and bustle of the kitchen and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I actually went and worked at a catering shop shortly after. And that's when I kind of started to learn like these different techniques and um like blanching or roasting or just I mean something as simple as like cooking grains, cooking vegetables, cooking soups, just things like that is it's such a good technique to have, and not many people completely understand the technique, and so that's really where I started to learn it. And I have to say, this is uh since maybe like I started this position, I've been in the kitchen and working with food since I graduated from school. So it's been this position is, I mean, I'm grateful for this position and because it gives you a different lens and aspect of still the food system, um, but in a in a food secure, food access way on that end, and then the other end on the farmers who are growing the product that I used to cook with
Yeah.
in all the restaurants and the kitchens and the laborers that are picking that product for the markets, the restaurants, etc. So it gives you a different scope. I feel like I now kind of have the from I'll say from the hands that it was picked with to the final end, kind of
Exactly.
an aspect of that. So it's very interesting. So, but I've been cooking for a real long time, and I don't plan to stop.
Good, good. That's great.
So Renee, thank you so much for this. I thought I'd share a little bit about how inspiring I thought that was for so many reasons.
No, thanks.
First, first this small grant that helps us introduce specialty crops, which is a weird phrase for saying food we eat, from the USDA. Uh, it's so important because to me it's the mission of the Food Shed Alliance to show people what local food is, first of all, who their farmers are, and then the next step is to help our community feel more comfortable cooking it and being more approachable. Um, and I'm also inspired by your talk because of who we know you are at the Food Shed. Um, you care about the job that you do with us, outreaching to farmers and connecting their food to pantries for people who don't always have proper access to local healthy food is so important, and that you love the job and you always do it with a smile. and that you have this skill set that you can also share with us to give us this insight about how local food can be more approachable. It's so important to make sure that we're bridging the gap between local food and consumers. And this is a really key skill to make sure that you don't have to have, we're so glad that you do, and you can articulate it with us here today, the skills to cook with local food, but you don't need a CIA degree
No,
to be able to do this. And that you made it so simple for us today was I'm very grateful for that.
well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it.
So if are there any other questions, we can let people know that this is going to be on our YouTube channel,
Right.
and we'll follow up in an email to people that registered with your chart and maybe some other tips that if you want to share from some notes.
Yeah,
And that
sounds good.
this will be on our YouTube channel, and we'll share that out via our newsletter and our social media. You can find the YouTube channel at the Food Shed Alliance, foodshedalliance.org.
Awesome. That's wonderful.
Thanks, Renee. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And that's it for the night. Thank you, guys. Thanks everyone for
everybody.
coming and joining us tonight. Everyone have a great night.
Good
All
night.
right. Have a good
Bye,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
See ya.